The millionaire was alone on Christmas, until the maid's daughter changed his day with a single gesture. Richard Caldwell woke up on the morning of December 26th with the drawing still in his hands. He had fallen asleep on the couch, something he hadn't done since his college days, back when he still believed that working 16 hours a day was the path to happiness. The apartment was cold. Morning light streamed through the panoramic windows, slicing through the silence like a blade, and outside, Manhattan had already returned to its relentless rhythm. Yellow cabs, hurried executives, delivery trucks blocking Fifth Avenue. He looked at the crumpled paper with its childish crayon strokes. The smiling man, the disproportionate tree, the two small figures beside it, and felt again that strange sensation in his chest, as if something inside him had been forced to wake up after years of self-induced coma. He folded the drawing carefully, placed it on the coffee table, and went to the kitchen to make coffee. The Italian espresso machine, which had cost $4,000, hummed softly and efficiently. Richard drank the coffee standing up, looking out the window, thinking about the little girl in the red coat and the smile she had given him without asking for anything in return. He didn't know her name. He didn't know how old she was. He didn't know anything, really, except that she was the daughter of Rosa, the woman who cleaned his apartment and whose presence he barely registered, as if she were part of the furniture, something functional, invisible. Richard felt a stab of shame. Not the performative shame executives display in compliance meetings, but something deeper, more uncomfortable, something that reminded him of the boy he once had been, the son of a factory worker in Ohio, before Harvard, before Wall Street, before he forgot where he came from. 2 hours later, he called the office. "I need the address of Rosa Mendez, the cleaning woman," he told his personal assistant, a 26-year-old named Tyler who organized his life with algorithmic precision. Tyler didn't ask questions. 15 minutes later, Richard had the address, an apartment building in the South Bronx near Simpson Street Station. Richard hadn't been to the Bronx in 20 years. The Uber ride took 50 minutes because of post-holiday traffic. The driver, a middle-aged Haitian man, tried to chat about the weather, about the Knicks, about how the city was getting more expensive by the day, but Richard replied with monosyllables, staring out the window as the scenery changed, gleaming skyscrapers giving way to low brick buildings, discount stores, evangelical churches with Spanish signs, laundromats, bodegas with barred windows. Rosa's building was a 6-story structure, gray facade, rusty metal fire escapes. Richard climbed to the 3rd floor, his Italian leather shoes echoing on the steps, and knocked on the door of apartment 3C. He heard voices on the other side, a quick argument in Spanish, hurried footsteps, and then the door opened. Rosa Mendez was 42, but looked 50. She wore an apron over a worn blouse, her hair pulled into a tight bun, her hands red from scrubbing floors and dishes. When she saw Richard standing there, her eyes widened with a mix of fear and confusion. "Senor Caldwell?" she said, her voice thin, almost disappearing. "Did something happen? I wasn't supposed to work today, but if you need—" "No," Richard interrupted, realizing his own voice sounded strange, less controlled than usual. "It's not that. I came to thank you." Rosa blinked, not understanding. Behind her in the narrow hallway, Richard saw the little girl, Lucia, peeking out with big eyes, her red coat hanging from a hook on the wall. "Thank me?" Rosa repeated, suspicious. Richard took a breath. "Your daughter. Last night she gave me a gift, a drawing. I wanted to thank her in person." Rosa's face changed. She looked back at Lucia, then at Richard again. "Senor, I'm so sorry. She shouldn't have bothered you. I told her to stay quiet in the hall, but she—" "No!" Richard said again, firmer this time. She didn't bother me. She was kind, and I didn't remember what that felt like. Rosa fell silent, studying his face with an intensity Richard hadn't expected. Finally, she opened the door a bit more. "Would you like to come in?" The apartment was small, clean, organized with the sort of care that comes from having to make a lot out of very little. There was an old couch with a blanket over its worn arms, a dining table with 4 mismatched chairs, a crucifix on the wall, family photos in cheap frames. It smelled of strong coffee and something sweet baking in the oven. Lucia sat on the sofa reading a picture book, and when Richard walked in, she looked up and smiled. The same smile as the day before, without fear, without calculation. "Hi," she said simply. "Hi," Richard replied, realizing he had no idea how to talk to a 7-year-old. Rosa brought coffee in mismatched mugs and sat in the opposite chair, her hands folded on the table. "You came all this way just to say thank you?" she asked, still suspicious. Richard looked at the coffee, at Rosa's calloused hands, at Lucia on the couch. "I was alone last night," he said, the words coming out rougher than he intended. "I was alone, and your daughter reminded me of something I had forgotten." "Of what?" Lucia asked, approaching the table with the unfiltered curiosity of children. Richard looked into her eyes. "That people can still be kind to each other, without wanting anything in return." Lucia tilted her head, thoughtful. "My mom says you're really rich." "Lucia!" Rosa scolded, but Richard raised his hand. "It's okay," he said. "She's right. I am." He paused. "But that didn't make me a better person. It made me a lonelier one." Rosa looked at him for a long moment, and Richard saw something shift in her expression. Not pity, but recognition, as if she understood what kind of loneliness he meant. "Do you have children?" she asked gently. "I do. A son and a daughter. I haven't spoken to them in 3 years." "Why?" Richard swallowed hard. "Because I chose work over them. Always. And when I finally realized what I had lost, it was too late." The silence that followed wasn't uncomfortable, but heavy, full of the weight of things left unsaid. Lucia climbed onto the chair beside Richard and placed her small hand over his. "You can call them," she said with the brutal simplicity of children. "My dad left when I was a baby, but my mom says that if he ever calls one day, she'll let me talk to him, because everyone deserves a second chance." Richard looked at the little hand resting on his, so small, so trusting, and felt something break inside him, something that had been frozen for so long he had forgotten it existed. He didn't call that day, nor the next. But on New Year's Eve at 11 p.m., Richard picked up the phone and dialed his daughter's number, the one he knew by heart but never had the courage to use. She didn't answer. He left a voicemail, his voice trembling, the words awkward. "Emily, it's me, Dad. I know you don't want to talk to me, and I understand, but I want you to know that I'm sorry for everything, and if you give me a chance, I'd like to try again. Not like I was before, like someone better." She didn't call back that night, nor the next week, but on January 15th, Richard received a text message. "Coffee? Saturday at 10 a.m. Corner Deli, Brooklyn." Richard replied immediately, "I'll be there." The following Monday, when Rosa arrived to clean the apartment, she found an envelope on the kitchen table. Inside were $5,000 in cash and a handwritten note. "For Lucia, for college, or for whatever she wants. And thank you for reminding me that I am still human. R.C." Rosa held the envelope with trembling hands and cried, not out of sadness, but the kind of tears that come when something impossible becomes real, when kindness appears where you least expected to find it. Lucia remained Lucia, a 7-year-old girl who believed the world could be different. And Richard Caldwell, a 52-year-old millionaire CEO, learned at last that the greatest luxury a man can have is not a 27-floor apartment or $1,000 scotch, but the ability to look into another person's eyes and see not a transaction, but a life, fragile, valuable, and as worthy of love as any other. He was still rich. His name was still etched on the glass facade. But now, when he looked at the city below, he didn't see just numbers, contracts, and opportunities. He saw people, and that, he discovered, made all the difference.